Right, so today we're working on the Plymouth. We're going to mess with this rear end. It is out of a 2000-ish Ford Ranger pickup. The width from drum face to drum face is about an inch wider than the Plymouth, so it's going to be about a ½ inch wider on each side. And then, since it was under a pickup, the spring perches are on the wrong side of the axle. Pickups, the springs sit on top of the axle. Cars, the springs are on the bottom side of the axle. And they're not going to be in the right spot on the tube anyway. So I need to cut the spring perches off. I'm going to go ahead and cut the shock mounts off and get that all ground up, smoothed off, and get things cleaned up so I can put new spring perches on where I need them. We'll have to get the old axle out from underneath the car. I do have new spring hangers for the back and new bushings because one of the spring hangers is actually broke. So I'm going to work on getting all this stuff cut off this axle and get things ready to go. Right, we're back in the shop on the old Plymouth finally. It's been a couple, 3 months, but we're back out here. Not feeling the best, so we'll see what we can get done. I do have my rear axle, and I'm going to swap under this car. I've got everything all cut off, ground down smooth. Unfortunately, I nicked the dang brake line, so I'll have to deal with that. Probably going to put new lines on anyway. I have a new rubber line that goes to the axle, and eventually we'll have to new emergency brake cables because I just chopped those off to get it out from underneath the old pickup that it came out from under. So, rear end's all prepped to go under. Now we've got to deal with getting the old one out. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to take the rear bumper off to do it. So let me crawl under here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right, so under the car, as you can tell, I had a broken, or cut maybe even, I think it looks like it was cut, spring shackle there. But I've got new spring shackles, bushings for the back here. That's no big deal. But the only way to get those out is they slide out. Well, the bumper bracket is in the way. So I have got to remove the rear bumper so I can get that out. So that's probably going to be the first plan of attack I do here, just to see if I can even get those to budge. I may have to either grinding wheel or get the old plasma torch out and just whack-a-do on those. And then, get my light here, we'll have to deal with U-bolts and shocks. I'm going to leave the front spring mounts in place. I don't know if I'm going to mess with those. And just drop down the springs and roll the axle out. Of course, I got to undo the drive shaft and everything. So yeah, sounds like loads of fun. I did get under here the other day and I sprayed everything down with some looby-dooby. So maybe things will come loose. Probably not. So anyway, let me get some stuff out and we'll see how well this bumper comes off. Alright, I have updates. I feel like crap. And after what seemed like an eternity, I finally have the rear bumper off. The two easy bolts to get to, of course, came right undone. The two harder bolts that were hard to get to, of course, locked up. So I had to cut them loose. Used the grinding wheel and a cutoff disc on the easy side. And then on this side, I just used a Sawzall. But the rear bumper is off. So, that'll finally give me access to spring shackles. And hopefully, I don't know, we'll try the U-bolts on the axle. I'll probably wind up having to cut them loose too. Shocks, don't even get me started on shocks. They're probably not going to come loose. But at least I got the bumper off. That's a start. This little, I don't know if you want to call it like an apron or a splash pan or what. It was actually attached to the bumper as well. So we'll have to play with that. Before the bumper goes back, this side was bent in. I'm going to try and straighten that out. Because I'm also going to, while the bumper's off, try and get this big whammy out of the fender or the rear quarter panel. So that's kind of nice, actually. I guess that gives me access to get to some stuff. So I'm going to go in and get some lunch, take some medicine. I've got our little pellet heater going. It's actually a little small. It's better for, I don't know, like a one-car garage or something like that. Something that doesn't have 12-foot tall ceilings and as big as this shop is. It doesn't do bad. It needs to run all day to really keep the heat going. I've got it on high. And I started out, it was 44 in here. It's kind of hard to see. But I think from looking at it, it's up to like 56 in here, which is not bad. And I'll keep it going. And today, I'm going to be, maybe even this weekend, I might just let it run all night, turn it down on low. It's like 35 or so outside. So that's better than being outside anyway. Anyhow, I'm rambling. Let me go get some lunch and I'll see how I feel after lunch. Right. After a few hours of work, the rear axle is out from underneath the Plymouth. Wasn't horrible. All the bolts for the U-bolts for the axle, all the nuts on the bolts, they came free. I think I'll actually even be able to reuse the bolts on the new axle. I think, maybe. I don't know, we'll find out. The shock nuts came off. The shocks came off easy. I just had to cut 2 bumper bolts, and the shackles, the nuts on the shackles came right out. It actually went pretty good. The only thing I could not get loose was the bolts for the dang drive shaft. They would not budge, and you can't really get a box end wrench or anything on them. So I just said to hell with it and cut the drive shaft. I'm not going to be reusing that drive shaft anyway. So yeah, now I'll do some prep work, get some stuff cleaned up under there, do a little spritzy with some rust preventer, if I can get it warm enough in the shop. It's like 60 in here now, and I'll work on getting this other axle rolled up under there and get the spring perches and stuff out. Work on going back with it. So yeah, that's it. I ended up having angle grinder with a death wheel, Sawzall, cheater pipe, but wasn't horrible. It's, half a day or so maybe. I took a couple hour break for lunch, took some medicine. So anyway, I'll start working on getting things to go back up under there. All right. All right. Been about a week since I've been in the shop. Been sick. But I'm back out here. I got out here yesterday afternoon and did some stuff. Our old axle, the shock mounts came out on the spring perches. You see right there. So, and if you can tell, they kind of angle up just a little bit when they come out of the spring perch. So I took my new spring perches and I welded the plate on the end and drilled a hole through and put my shock mount in, and I gave them a little tweak with the pipe here to give them just a little angle up like the other ones. So that should be good. I'm going to fix my goof up on this brake line right here. I'm going to replace this brake line if I can get it to come loose. And then I believe we're ready to get this rear end underneath the car and try and get everything lined up. So let me work on getting this line changed out and I'll catch up with you. Right, we're in the shop on this Plymouth rear end still. I had a little setback due to an oversight of my own doing. When I ordered new spring perches, I did not take into account that the new spring perches were going to be wider than the old ones. Therefore, the axle U-bolt plates weren't wide enough for the bolts to hit the holes. So I said, okay, I will order new U-bolts and plates. And I did. And I still did not take into account the width of the damn axle perch. So they wouldn't work either. But I had, like I said, this is a rear end of a 2000 Ford Ranger. I had kept the plates out of the Ford Ranger. I'm like, okay, awesome. I'll use the new bolts with the Ford Ranger plates. Nope. Because they won't line up with the holes. So I end up taking my old axle bolts from the Plymouth and they would line up. Don't ask me why, they just do. So finally, after trial and error 3 different times, we finally have this axle set in place. It is centered side to side. It is clocked at the right pinion angle. When I took the old axle out, I stuck my angle finder on the yoke and found out what the angle was. And so I've got this new axle set at the exact same angle. So, in theory, if I'm right, I should be able to put some tack welds on my perch hangers and then roll this axle back out from under here and weld her up, and I should be good to go. I did make a new brake line for the passenger side over there, where I had nicked it with the cutting wheel, and I've got my new rubber line installed on the axle. I am going to have to move the mounting place for the rubber line. The Plymouth axle, the rubber line came out over here, and the Ford Ranger sits up on the pumpkin. So the rubber line will not reach to the mounting place up here. So that mounting bolts in to the frame. I will unbolt it and move it up higher above the axle so that the rubber hose will reach. And I will make a new line, a metal line, from there down to here. So I'm probably going to end up having to replace the metal line, brake lines on here anyway. So that's no big deal. So, finally, after a little trial and error and still being sick a little bit, I am ready to get some spot welds on this axle to get it stuck on them hangers. And then I'm going to roll it out and set it up on these ramps and fire up my older than me welder and get this son of a bitch welded up so I can get her stuck back under the car for good. So let me work on that a little bit and I'll get back with you.
All right, finally, the Ford Ranger rear end is underneath the Plymouth. Got brand new shocks, brand new bushings. I got the brand new brake line ran, new rubber hose on the brake line. Finally, it is hanging there on its own. All I've got left to do now is bleed the brakes and spritz up inside here a little bit. I've already looked, the brake shoes are good on here, so that's no big deal. But I'll get the brakes bled, do a little spritzy on the spring, and that rear end is in. So it should work just fine for what I need. Get the tires and wheels put back on it, get this thing back down on the ground. Then I can work on getting the hood off. I'm probably going to take the front clip off so I can work on getting the motor and trans out of this thing. So, until I start working on that, that's it for now. Thanks.